Okay? Is it right to say that someone did something when it hasn't yet been proven in a court of law? It's not necessarily right. So in our journalism, in our writing as journalists, we have to decide how we are going to present this story in an ethical way, in a way that is right and good. So let me just check for any questions here. Okay. Yeah, there's there's a lot that's hectic that's going on at the moment, and it's not just the plague. There's a lot of other things that are happening around. You have to read the news, guys, and don't just read the news that about South Africa. Read the news about the world as well. You know, it's unbelievably important that you know what is going on in the world around you. For example, did you know that Hong Kong has just been subjected to a new security law by China that basically allows them to charge anybody with treason or sedition if they are talking about democracy in public or advocating for democracy in public. It's quite hectic. So we've got the cricket news as usual. Okay, cricket is big right now, I think. So is rugby. Here, John Hassel, music's great globetrotter. Be more aware of the rest of the world. Okay, I agree. You should be more aware of the rest of the world. You can't live in a bubble because everything that happens out there also affects us. Here we've got, okay, MSN is another news source. World's economy sputtering, recovery threatened by flaring virus. Again, it's also very COVID central at the moment. All of these news reports. But you guys must know that there have been riots in America. There have been incredible protests in America. There's been stuff happening all over the world, in fact. You know, Egypt, Tanzania, all over the place. There's just chaos. People are ousting their governments all over the world. So, you know, people just aren't happy at the moment, generally. And then, of course, we've got Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas welcome baby girl into the world. Yes. I don't even know who those people are, but anyway. And, yeah, looking for a staycation destination. I don't know who's got money to travel at the moment, seeing as that everybody's dying of poverty. Here we go. And, of course, IOL and Times Live actually can be counted on to always provide some really interesting celebrity gossip, for want of a better word. Anyway, here we go. Nothing too hectic at the moment. US-China relations are, as usual, on the verge of collapse. And then there's the inevitable article about Meghan and Harry. So, what else? I personally prefer... Oh, hold on a minute. Let me just see if I can get... Because I can't get it on this browser, unfortunately. The Daily Maverick doesn't like Brave, because Brave blocks ads. And so... Hold on a minute. Let's do this. Spell it right. Daily Maverick is a really good newspaper to follow because it gives in-depth articles. It caters to a higher level of, and it doesn't give you rubbish. You know, Times Live and IOL gives you rubbish. This is all very interesting and you know, better food for your brain. Let's put it that way. So we've got no stringent conditions for the IMF loan. That's interesting. party message. Of course, you will find amazing cartoons by Shapiro on here, and it's all political satire, and it's all commentary on the way that the government is running the country right now. So if you're easily offended, or if you're a Jacob Zuma supporter, but I recommend that you read it anyway and try and do it with an open mind. Let's see if anybody else has got any comments. Okay, not yet. So what I'd like to talk to you about now is actually, it's more about the approaches to ethics. If you've done the reading, I'm not quite sure how to do this. I'm still learning about doing live streams, but basically I want to talk to you guys about the basic approaches to ethics, because these are not theories. These are ways that you can use to decide what is a right and good action as a journalist. So if you take a look at page 1, there are 5 basic approaches to ethics. Very quickly just explain them to you. I don't have them anywhere aside from like on the textbook. So I'm going to put this up in the meantime. Okay. And let's look at basic approaches to ethics. First of all, we've got this one called the golden mean. Now, when you find yourself in an ethical dilemma where you go, what is the right and good action? What is the thing that I must do that is best? What you need to think about in terms of the golden mean is finding the best compromise for everyone. Okay? It's the sweet spot. It's the idea that everyone benefits the same, or everyone has the same quality of outcomes. Usually, for a jaded, cynical cow like me, I would say that means that everybody is equally as unhappy as everybody else. But of course, it can be the opposite as well. You can say that everybody is equally as happy with the outcomes. But basically, the golden mean is trying to not favor one party over the other when you're looking at outcomes of a decision. So in terms of, hold on, let's see. Oh, the Jacob Zuma supporters are so angry right now. Let's see, what can we look at? Oh, fun times. Oh, this is beautiful. So, Nazi Nhlego testified yesterday at the Zondo Commission. And if you've been following this, there have been some amazing humdingers coming out of that commission of inquiry. It's unbelievable what people say there. You can't make this shit up, honestly. So the person who wrote this, Marianne Tam, is a seasoned journalist. And she has written an article here which kind of, okay, it doesn't use the golden mean. This actually uses the veil of ignorance, because if you take a look on page 231, you'll see the veil of ignorance is that you pretend that you have this veil over your face so that you can't see who you're talking to. So you don't know who they are. They could be, the King of England, the King of, wherever else, Poland. It can be King Goodwill Zwelithini himself, or it could be the person who serves him tea in the morning. But every person is treated the same. And so this is a really good example of that, because, this guy, he blamed giving a convicted fraudster and illegal immigrant a job in the position of chief of staff to former Minister of Police. So he was the Minister of Police, and his chief of staff was a convicted illegal immigrant. And he blamed that on the carving up of the African continent by colonial powers in 1884. yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose you can maybe link the two in some way, maybe, but I mean, it is a little bit of a stretch, you have to admit. But just because he is former Minister of Police, Natsi Nhlego, doesn't mean that he needs to be treated like, you know, like he should have any special favors. He's treated just like anybody else. If he says something stupid, then the journalists are going to go, that said something stupid, you know. And if, you know, and regardless of who it is, oh, we've got Kenneth in for lunch. No. Say hi to the students, Kenneth.
Hello.
They're all listening. So, anyway, please have one of those abos because they're all ripe. Sorry, guys. I just need to sort some stuff out. Okay. So, don't you think? Actually, I'm not even going to try and jinx it because I think that this is this live stream is a better connection than last week, fortunately. Anyway, moving on. The golden mean. Okay, so we've done the golden mean. It seeks a sweet spot for shared outcomes, the shared quality of outcomes. So everyone gets the same type of outcome, whether it's good or whether it's bad or whether it's mediocre. We're not favoring one particular party. The next one, in terms of the categorical imperative, I'm just looking through these articles and seeing where I can find a good example of each of these. Because, you know, as a journalist, when you are... Yes, it could have been a paywall. As a journalist, when you're writing, you have to balance out what you write. You're going to hurt somebody, maybe, but is it worth it? So when you're writing an article and you're using the categorical imperative, which is, it starts at the bottom of page 230, you think to yourself, you have to consider, how is it that I would like people to interact? And then you have to, it's almost like a cross between lead by example and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You have to demonstrate the kind of treatment that you would like people to show each other and you as well. So if you feel that it's okay to, you know, well, if you feel that it's okay to lie about yourself, then you should accept that other people are going to lie about themselves as well. And if you feel that it's not okay, then, you know, don't misrepresent people. Don't misrepresent yourself. Where is this? Just trying to think out. Andrew Mlangeni, a man of honor who trusted his party above the people. Okay, so Andrew Mlangeni, I think he was the last Rivonia trialist alive. He recently passed on, and this is take a look here, Opinionista. Okay, it's an opinion piece, not news. But it is giving a good account of his life, Mlangeni's life, and, you know, how he conducted himself before and after the Rivonia trial as well. So this is a pretty good example of, say, the categorical imperative. Be fair to people. Be fair to people, especially if you feel like you don't want people to slate you after you're dead. Don't slate people after they're dead. If you've got things that you can prove, then yes, present them. But at the same time, you know, you have to act in the way that you believe other people should be acting. And that's the categorical imperative. I'm not sure if this is a really... Okay, on page 231, you'll see the principle of utility. Just check for questions. Okay, are there any questions? If you have questions, please make sure that you type them into this live chat. Okay. yeah, the principle of utility. Basically, what this means is when you have an ethical dilemma, when you're trying to decide what to do and how to conduct yourself, what to write, how to present it, when you look at utilitarian ethics, you go, the end justifies the means. If we are benefiting a lot of people, the most people, by disclosing this information, then it is important that we do it, and therefore it makes it a good decision, even if it means bringing somebody else into disrepute. And there's plenty of examples here of utilitarian ethics. This is also a good one here. But let's look specifically at news, because I don't want opinions. What do we got here? Okay. Cape Town protests call for SAPS to apply Marikana recommendations when dealing with civil unrest. Okay. Again, not sure if this is such a great example, but let's look at it and see what we can see. Hundreds of protesters in Mamre in the Western Cape outnumbered about 16 police officers armed with stun grenades, tear gas, and rubber bullets. Police were also almost lured into a trap and caught in the middle of protesters in Silverstream Road. This was one of several shutdown protests held on Monday. Okay, so it's very important. No, it's not great to publish these kinds of articles because it makes people scared. It makes people angry, and but it also gets people talking, and it also is important to bring these things out into the light to make sure that people are aware that there are these protests, so that people are able to have an opinion on them. You can't have an opinion if you don't even know if it's happening. So in terms of utilitarian ethics, the fact that this guy, Vincent Kreyvachen, I'm guessing, wrote this article and published this here. I mean, yes, it's critical of the SAPS. Had the South African Police Services implemented some of the 138 recommendations of an independent experts panel following the Marikana massacre on 16th of August 2012, it would have been better equipped to deal with the current rolling protests across the country. So yeah, he is kind of tearing down the SAPS a little bit by saying, they didn't even follow the recommendations from this panel after the Marikana. I mean, they should have, but they didn't. And now they're still battling to deal with protesters. They're still battling to keep things under control. And, if you know anybody in SAPS, you know that they are doing their best. But this kind of article, using utilitarian ethics, presents these problems in a way that people understand. And people go, why can't they be changed? We need to do something about this. People, it's best for everyone that they know, rather than to hold that information back to save SAP's face, if you know what I mean. Okay, cool. No questions yet. Is everyone still watching? How many people have we got? Oh, 21. Awesome. Okay. So let's go back to Chrome. So we've looked at the veil of ignorance, and the veil of ignorance again is just pretending that everyone is the same. Everyone is the same. There's any special favor just because they have a higher position in authority. When you're a journalist, people are people. Every person is a person. And that leads us on to the last approach to ethics. As a journalist, you are going to rely on sources for most of your information, but you need to treat those people like people. And that is the principle of self-determination. You have to respect that every person is an individual with their own thoughts and their own feelings. And you can't just treat them like stepping stones. You can't make your mark or make your career as a journalist on the backs of people who might be damaged, whose reputations might be damaged, whose lives might be damaged as a result of, you wanting to print an article that's going to sell lots of papers. So those are the basic approaches to ethics. The thing that I want to explain to you guys most when it comes to ethics, and we'll do ethical story writing at the end of this module as well, okay, so that we can then consolidate everything that you've learned. But what I really want to explain to you guys about ethics in journalism is that it is about not just how you write things, but also about how you conduct yourself as a member of the press. Because we look at these we look at these news sites, and they, everyone believes them. If you look at all of these articles, people read them because they're expecting the truth. They're expecting the news. They're not expecting a story. Okay. Here's another one. Ground Up is also amazing. Ground Up. Okay, and these articles actually, they're hard hitting. They're not your normal everyday news fare. Ground Up is 100% independent, so you can expect that the articles here are going to be real. There's always an agenda somewhere, but they are going to be these issues are reported on well and in a fair and balanced way. So, Questions for a Sex Worker. That's an amazing article. I would read that. Why would I read that? Because, it's interesting. Constance Mate explains why she believes her work should not be criminalized. Okay, as a sex worker, we see prostitutes on the side of the road, and they've got a really bad reputation amongst, normal, everyday Christian folk. But from my point of view, acknowledging that it's the oldest profession in the world, and also acknowledging that sometimes women don't have a choice, and sometimes women actually voluntarily choose this lifestyle, okay? You have to acknowledge those things, and then you can go, well, this is interesting. This is an interesting topic. I'd like to know more. But if I think that Ground Up is made of people, or Ground Up employs reporters that are going to make stories up for my entertainment, like, for example, Daily Sun, for example, I'm not going to read it because it's not news for me. It's fiction for me. If I know, or if I think that it's rubbish, then I'm not going to read it. Just like I don't read independent online, IOL. I don't, sorry, not oil. That's wrong. IOL.co.za. IOL pushes a particular agenda. It supports one faction of the ANC, else, and they're not really interested in reporting the news as truthfully and ethically as possible. They're more interested in pushing an agenda through the news. So, and you can see it in the way that they treat information. Gordon blames lack of finances for Saks liquidation. Basically, this headline claims that he's copping out. And if you know anything about IOL, it's linked to Iqbal Survey, who's linked to the Zoomers, and the Zoomers and that whole faction are particularly against Pravin Gordhan. So obviously, they're going to publish this kind of article. For me, this is okay, it's not fiction, but it's not ethical because it doesn't present the news as fairly and ethically as possible. Ground Up, however, does. I like them. Daily Maverick is funded by George Soros. I'm not even going to get into that now, but I take everything that I read on Daily Maverick with a pinch of salt. The whole thing is, though, that we all know that we can't believe everything that we read. Why is that? Bell Pottinger is my answer. So, hold on. White monopoly capital. Yeah, it's even there. So, this guy, well, these people, let me just check and see which link I've got on this brief. Oh, not the brief, sorry. This whole thing was to demonstrate to you, yeah, it was the Biz News one, damning evidence. So, just check for questions so far. No? Okay. So, the interesting thing about the term white monopoly capital. Okay, you guys have heard it before. The EFF is still hanging on to it like a Jack Russell hanging onto a tire. But this was actually debunked a while ago by a PR company, a public relations company called Bell Pottinger. They were hired by the Guptas and the Jacob Zuma faction to distract South Africa, okay, from all of the stuff that was going on with the Guptas and Jacob Zuma. And it worked. I mean, it polarized our country in terms of race like nothing before. It was unbelievable how well it worked. It is an invention from London-listed PR firm Bell Pottinger. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it was created to focus hatred and blame on white people, on rich white people, okay? And like I said, it worked. But the people who made it belonged to a PR company, and they presented it as news, as journalism, which first of all is it's very unethical. It wasn't necessarily illegal what they were doing, because remember that law and ethics overlap most of the time, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes ethics are different from the law. The law is there to protect people's rights, okay? And ethics are there to help people decide how to respect each other's rights. Okay, if you see the difference. So when we were looking at this case study, if you read through this case study, it would become apparent to you that what was written, what was fed to the South African public, and what was reported on in the newspapers as well about white monopoly capital was thoroughly unethical. Why? Because everybody has a right to feel safe and free, okay? We live in a democratic capitalist society, for the most part, and everyone has the right to make money legally, okay? And those tweets, those Facebook posts, and the information that was leaked to the press and eventually became news articles about white monopoly capital infringed on those rights, those people's rights. All it did was create division. It created disharmony within the country. And that is not ethical conduct. As a journalist, you are tasked with the duty of informing the public, but you're not tasked with the duty of inciting racial hatred. That is unethical behavior. It's also illegal. That's where it overlaps. But if you haven't yet, press code of conduct. Here, which I have got for you. I did put it up on Cole Campus as part of your content. But you can actually go through this. This was created by the Press Council of South Africa. Now, the Press Council of South Africa is a group of independent media professionals from the press who have formed this regulatory body. It's got nothing to do with the government. The government doesn't decide what the Press Council does. And the reason why is because if the government is involved in what the press do and they start to regulate the press, then we no longer have a free press. And articles like these don't even appear, ever. Which is great if you're a Jacob Zuma supporter, but not if you're actually interested in knowing what's going on in the country. So, the Press Council got together and they created a press code of conduct, which all respectable, credible publications will adhere to. They will, claim to adhere to. So everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media, freedom to receive and impart information or ideas, freedom of artistic creativity, and academic freedom and freedom of scientific research. Okay, that right does not extend to propaganda for war, incitement of imminent violence, or advocacy of hatred that is based on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, and that constitutes incitement to cause harm. And then, of course, here we've got actual specifics about the Press Code of Conduct in terms of gathering and reporting news. These are the... Oh, and it says here even, not plagiarize. Ha 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 ha. And you thought it was just in college. It's everywhere. So in terms of gathering and reporting news, these are the guidelines, and you can read them for yourselves because they are on Cole Campus. In terms of independence and conflicts of interest, these are the ways that you should conduct yourself and how publications should govern themselves. In terms of privacy, dignity, and reputation, okay, these are the guidelines here. In terms of protection of personal information, these are the guidelines. Discrimination and hate speech, there are the guidelines. Advocacy. You see, this is an interesting part. It's actually unethical to present your opinion as fact as a journalist. In the Code of Conduct, for those of you who can't see it, I'll read it for you. The media may strongly advocate their own views on controversial topics, provided that they clearly distinguish between fact and opinion, and not misrepresent or suppress or distort relevant facts. Which is why Daily Maverick has an entire section dedicated to opinionistas. These are people who are writing articles based on the facts of the day, but who are presenting their own opinions. Okay. And some of these guys are actually really, really good. I mean, some of them I don't agree with, but you don't necessarily have to agree with everyone. That's the beauty of freedom of speech, is that, people can say stuff and not expect that everyone is going to agree with them. But if you are a journalist, it is unethical to present your own opinion as fact. And you have to remember that. Protected comments. These are the guidelines around protected comments. Okay, these are the guidelines around children, because children are vulnerable people, which means that you cannot just report or publish photos on or name children in media reports. Okay, have we got anybody here? Anybody? Wait. Are we still streaming nicely? Okay, cool. That's good. And then, of course, violence and graphic content. Here are so you can see all the way through here, we've got these guidelines. These are guidelines that help the press to regulate their own conduct. Basically, that's what I wanted to tell you. And in terms of Bell Pottinger, I think they thought that they could get away with it because Bell Pottinger is from overseas, from London. So, you know, they've got their own particular press code, and maybe it doesn't apply to them because they were publishing stuff in another country. So, you know, yeah, it does get a little bit murky. And you have to remember also that in terms of the textbook, as I've said to you in the notes that I've given you, Vincent Filak is an American author. This textbook is an American textbook. So our regulatory bodies and our laws are, around reporting are going to be different from those of the US. So you have to remember that when you're reading the book. But the basic tenets of journalism in terms of ethics and your basic approaches to ethics will always remain the same. You'll find videos that give it in 4 points, some in 7, some in 10, but really it all amounts to the same thing. Try as far as possible to present as much of the truth as you can in as fair and as balanced a way as you can. Try and make sure that when you are reporting the news, damage somebody's reputation. The results must be worth it. The results must benefit the most people. And not just like 3 or 4 people, because that's more than one. I'm talking about it must be in the public interest to allow this information to come out. So that's why, you know, when the journalists published all of the information on the Gupta leaks, on Jacob Zuma and Kandla and all of those scandals that came up, their integrity was questioned by the people who were being reported on, obviously, because their reputations are now irreparably damaged. But it was very, very important for the people of South Africa to know that their leaders were doing these things. So if it was a report on Jacob Zuma and like what he wears in the bedroom or whatever, then it would have been unethical because that's nobody's business but his. But because it had to do with the country and it directly impacted the country, it was ethical to report on it. So you have to make those distinctions. Taking money for an article is not ethical, because how do you know whether it's real or not? These guys, I'm fairly certain that none of these people were paid by the sources, to write these articles. And where they are, then you find that it is sponsored. They do have sponsored content here, which is paid articles from people. I can't find any at the moment, but hold on. They do actually mark them as sponsored. Anyway, look, this has been a pretty long session. Does anybody have any questions? I would really like for you guys to ask your questions. If you can't ask them here, you can ask them in the group. What I need from you guys, really, is to go through this. Please, read it. You should already have read it and done all of these things. If you haven't, do them now. watch the videos, do the exercises, do the multiple choice quiz on Cole Campus, and make sure that you understand about ethics. As I said before, we will be doing another section on ethics at the end, but that will be ethical story writing. So that is putting all of your knowledge and your learning into practice and writing ethical stories. Because what we've noticed is that first years tend to not consider ethics when they're writing their final stories for the module. And ethics needs to inform every part of your conduct as a journalism, whether you're interacting with colleagues, whether you are interviewing sources, whether you are writing information down, writing about events, deciding whether to publish or not, and how you present your photography, all of those things must be informed by ethical decisions, and you need to understand ethics in order to make those decisions correctly. So, do the work, and then ask the questions. Ask me the questions, or you can ask Karina. Karina will be taking you next week at 12:30 for her lecture, which she's designed, which is newsworthiness and news values. So that's where we start looking at news and how we decide what is news and what isn't, and what makes it news. How does an audience decide whether it's interesting or not? How does an audience decide, and how does a publisher decide whether it's news or not? What criteria do we use to determine? So, you need to finish this by the time you get to Karina's lecture. Please make sure that you do. Are there any questions? No. Okay. Well, I'm really, really pleased that I've been able to stream this thing for so long without it. What? Thanks for tuning in. No, this didn't end 59 seconds ago. It's still going. I can't believe this. How is this so? Okay. Well, I want to say goodbye to you guys before it does actually end. And I will see you